Imagine this, your company is spiraling, deadlines are slipping, your best people are burning out, and the board is starting to lose faith. One wrong move and the legacy you've built could crumble. That's the terrible reality many CEOs face, and that's exactly where Deb Coviello steps in. So let's go straight into the first question, which is, you've sat at CEOs' sides at their breaking point when everything feels like it could collapse. What's the first sign a leader is in danger of losing control, and why do so many of them miss it before it's too late?
Oh, Mark. So, I have seen this time and time again. When leaders rise to the levels of being the president, the CEO, or any of those significant C suite leadership roles, they've gotten to those places because their playbook works for them over and over again. And they know how to be the firefighter to run towards, take control, direct the troops, get through the crisis, high five everybody, and say, we've lived to survive another day. And what I have found is that sometimes the ecosystem or the conditions change, that what they're doing is no longer working. And it's just an awful feeling when you see them losing their confidence. They're face to face with you saying, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. And they no longer have the tools to be able to face it. And I sometimes say to them, why did you wait so long? And they're often celebrated for being that firefighter and fixing things. And it's a little bit to do with their pride. They've been successful in the past and they don't know why they're not now. Now, when I am sitting across for them, I can see them for where they're at. There's a little bit of their mindset that has to be dealt with as well. But whenever you have the drop in CEO or an outside perspective, I can see more of the landscape than they can. I can see what the problem is at the root. And yes, I'll jump in and solve the business issue with them. I'll bolt on to them and be part of their leadership team. But at the same time, one, we're working on their mindset and how their leadership might need to change. And also, I can see what the greater opportunity is that we need to fix for a sustainable outcome. This is where an external perspective, a business advisor, can be so helpful for those C suite leaders that are finding themselves in a place where they're no longer successful.
And so you're part coach, part business analyst, part business operations, part
Yeah.
strategist. But equally, one
Yeah.
area which seems to pop up when I was doing research is that mediator as well.
Yeah, you hit on it. This is funny. So I was talking to my brand specialist where the drop-in CEO comes in as I deal with the messy middle. So leaders think they first need somebody to solve a business issue or transformation, or they might say, I need coaching for my team. We need to evolve their essential skills. But what I find is that it's a little bit of all of that
Mm,
stuff. I am a coach, I am a business advisor, and that's what makes me a little bit different than the
yeah.
rest. Fractional leaders do come in and provide a service for some period of time, but you can't do it without also dealing with the human itself. And when you talk about mediation, I actually had a situation where I was the fractional chief operations officer for a public relations company. And what made the CEO extremely successful, customer facing, the strategist, and she was having conflict with her head of operations or on the delivery side.
Mm,
But she may have had a organization prior that just knew what to do.
mm,
And as people turned over, there were new resources. She made certain assumptions. And when the behaviors or outcomes didn't match her expectation, she started getting very upset, but she didn't know how to deal or give feedback or have a critical conversation. So, in that situation, before the relationship fell apart, they asked me to sit in and listen and coach them on the conversation to identify what the situation or expectation was, agree on the gap, and then mutually decide what then each party can do to move forward the relationship and close the gap. That is something, again, just so many years of experience watching human behavior, seeing what essential skills don't exist, and being able to build consensus and move people forward. Because, again, business is about bridging gaps and relationships. And yes, I have had to be a mediator.
how do you have those? Because I think naturally a lot of us have a problem with difficult conversations. It's a struggle to to man up, woman up, however you want to phrase it, and actually have those difficult conversations. How are you going into these companies, watching, listening, analyzing, and then having those difficult conversations? How do you approach those types of situations?
So let's just say, Mark, that this is a skill that has had to evolve over time because I was not a master of such skill. I'll go back a bit in time. My backstory came coming up as a child in a family where there was so much confrontation that either one, I ran for the hills, or two, what could I do to build consensus and have everybody to be calm and let's kumbaya and let's move forward together. I developed skills where people actually thought I was more of a consensus builder versus a type A results oriented leader because when we bring together multicultural, multinational groups or different areas of the organization, I had to learn skills of empathy, deep understanding. Let's establish the problem statement, all of these skills to be able to move people and project forward. But I had an underdeveloped skill in the event where I was frustrated. Why aren't they behaving? And why am I not getting that report? I too had frustration. And so I would probably live with the frustration or build up so much anxiety before that conversation that it wasn't healthy. So, in my practice, I actually work with somebody, I role played, and we developed a framework for having critical conversations. And what it does is it de escalates the anxiety and breaks it down into step by step approach. So, first of all, we're in an organization or something for a common good. What is it that we can agree to? That's step one. What is the common ground? We are all here to deliver customer value and be number one in our market share. Everybody can head nod and say yes. That's the first step in approaching a challenging conversation, is not to have the perception of a challenging conversation, but what is it that we can agree on first? And then in that, state the situation, again, de emphasizing the personal. I see the situation this way, and there's a challenge, a gap, etc. Do you see it the same way? And I will tell you, this is the best learning because you'll find the other person, based on their collective experience, may have a completely different perception. And all of a sudden, you have the aha moment to understand why are you at this impasse. And through this, there's great learning. Once you understand why there is different perspective, but eventually agree, okay, there is a gap here, resource, capability, expectation, etc. Then you say, for the common good, which you all agreed upon, I can do this to bridge that gap. I can start sending you the memos or the reports, but could you at least then acknowledge it and make sure that it's passed along to the team? So by the end of the week, we get that report out together and meet customer expectations. That give and take de-escalates the anxiety, and what you've actually done far more than closed a gap or dealt with a challenging conversation is you've improved the relationship, which ultimately is the outcome you want. Whether you like the person or not, you've built a conversation. So with that, I share that framework every time I can because no longer should it be a challenging conversation, but addressing gaps with confidence and moving forward.
So it does sound like you're trying to build consensus. You said that from your background, you're building consensus. Yes, you're having the
Well,
difficult conversation, but you're trying to bring everyone, every stakeholder
bring people.
along the journey. So you are building consensus in that sense.
You're right. You are right. But on a one on one basis where there's preconceived perceptions or notions that this person I'm about to face with, we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and take it out back. But no, really, it's, we sometimes get inside our minds when we have these one on one conversations, and they're valid. We have these feelings, but it's because perhaps we profile people, we judge people. We honestly have not invested enough in the relationship to understand where they're coming from because they could still be a pain in the to deal with. They may be very direct in a different leadership style. But had you or I or them taken the time to get to know the person, oh, now I know why you've been such a about this, then you might approach them differently or understand their perspective and be able to move things forward. And you no longer have challenging conversations. You're just trying to move things forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a consensus builder. You nailed it.
Which is like when you're dealing with corporate environments, and I know you had a corporate career before
Yeah.
dropping CEO, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are working with larger size companies now, are you?
Let's define larger.
Well, you tell me, what is your ideal
Yeah.
client? Like, what would you like? Who are the people that you like to work with and you're successful working with? What size business?
So, by the time a business gets to more than 200 employees, they probably have hired full time equivalents for those roles for which they no longer need me.
Yeah,
Often, my sweet spot is dealing with companies that are under that size. Typically, the entry point is about 25 people up to 50. I love working with those smaller companies,
yeah,
but sometimes they have exceeded their capacity or capability. So, if it's 25 to 50, it's a sweet spot. Sometimes it could be two manufacturing facilities, a legacy facility, and a new startup. So that's where you get 100 or 200 people. Though I love the dynamics because those smaller entities are evolving.
yeah,
They appreciate the maturity of our understanding and perspective from larger companies, incredibly agile,
yeah.
having wonderful cultures, can move on a dime. So I like to navigate in that space. But if anybody from a large corporation, thousands, multinational, hey, I've been there, I can help you. Think about me dropping in for maybe a short amount of time and providing amazing value.
So you wear a lot of hats: author, speaker, consultant, podcaster, even a silver medalist curler, which we touched on in the last episode. Which of those roles have taught you the most about resilience and why?
Resilience. Interesting. I could talk about resilience. Speaker, podcaster. The resilience question could go to the curling. So I have been an amateur curler for now 17 years, and I've curled in a number of different places. My skills have been wonderful. Then I would lose some of my skills because maybe I took some time off. But when we put together a team, a women's team for Arena Nationals, and again, when we were an arena club, that was when we did not have our own dedicated space, so we didn't have the opportunity to practice our sport as much. We came together, we were communicating, and there was something about us performing as a team, truly as a team, that we got to the end. And my husband said to me, because there was also a men's event, he said, "You guys are firing on all pistons. Do you know that you could go all the way?" And I was like, "What? What? No, you guys could go all the way." So an outside perspective, they're looking at, here's a team that we put ourselves together. We haven't had the opportunity to really play that much together. And all of a sudden, we're in the gold medal round. So we did play against Oklahoma, and we only lost by 1 point. And the interesting thing for me was I just felt like I had won the Olympics.
Mm,
My teammates, however, were sad and went off into
really?
the changing room. And I'm looking around me as I'm high fiving the other team and realizing we had just achieved greatness after challenges of not having enough time to really play. And we almost won. So I felt incredibly victorious, resilient to say I could do this again and compete again. And I have competed quite a bit. That's a bit of a story of resiliency on the personal side. But if
Yeah.
I had to say something on the business side, when I left corporate and finding my way into the podcast ecosystem, I felt like I was reborn as a creative because I was a creative as a child, a talker, a speaker, a dancer. You couldn't shut me up. And I went into the education system and I was asked to conform. And I did, and I quieted down. But once I had the opportunity to speak, to interview, to create on my own terms, people look at me and say, "Deb, how did you reinvent yourself?" And I said, maybe I rediscovered who I once was. So sometimes these significant business or life-changing transformations are opportunities to be your truest self. And I know that's trite, but honestly, that's resilience. I've come out, I've been successful on my own terms, trying different things out, creative mediums, writing a book, doing a podcast. I would absolutely say those are stories of resiliency. And I really appreciate the question that regardless of where you're at in your career, regardless of how old you are, you can restart. You have multiple chapters along the way. And
Absolutely.
grateful to share some of those
No, that's
stories with you.
wonderful. So when you drop into the CEO's world that you're working with, often you're in the middle of chaos or you're in the middle of turmoil that you're having to deal with. What's the very first thing that you look for to assess the problem that may be underneath the surface?
A lot of consultants, business advisors have their cookie cutter approach, and they'll have their 5-point to 100-point question assessment and just fill in the blanks. And it causes a lot of tunnel vision for, oh, you're off on this, you're off on that. And yes, I do have my bag of tricks. I have my assessments on how I look at an organization. But I also sometimes, even though I want to take a lot of notes, I sometimes refrain from taking notes, because I find that sometimes the best thing that I can do is just stand back and stand in one place and look at the activity and see what is really happening versus somebody saying, let me start you at the beginning of my production line and let me take you to point B and let me take you to point C, because everything will be perfect. But when I, either stand in one place and just watch the activity, you actually see all the other processes or things that are not working well in addition to what they want you to see. I also will look at people's body language. Because again, if they're saying, look at this process here and look at that, you don't get a chance to interact with people. If people are not looking at their supervisor as the supervisor passes by, or the people are all heads down, you start seeing some underlying issues that no quality assessment, operations assessment is going to show you. You can clearly see where there is leadership issues, lack of support. Those, if I may say, are the things we need to go after, far beyond just the thing. So when I talk about root cause analysis, people will actually, like whack-a-mole, they'll go at what is obviously in front of them. Oh, we've got a training issue. That's why we have all these problems. Fix that. Gosh darn it, you're going to have a training problem next month also. You need to look at the next layer of what are the conditions that exists. Like maybe you put people on a production line after 2 days of training when they maybe need a month of coaching and mentorship to understand context of what they're doing. And then after that, if we don't give people enough time to train and assimilate the culture and the operations, then you got to go one step level. What are the management conditions that exist that allow people to go out on the line far before they're really ready? And then ultimately you blame them because they're not trained and they're making mistakes. That is my secret sauce. I look at everything all the way up to management and what are those things that others can't see. I will put together my formula. I think we need to do this first, second, third, but here's the strategy, the long-term things we need to work on. And by the way, I probably need to work with leadership at the same time. You've got to give the people the resources. You've got to give them the time so that they can be successful. So that's a little bit about the drop-in CEO, how I drop in. I do have my formula, but I step back and actually look, because then I'll see things that others can't see.
Although there is a formula, a principles, guidelines, there's lots of different words for it, and you have your process, you are still in an element bespoke, creating what you think that company needs. So if it is a sort of a difficulty with the relationship between, I'm making up, COO and CEO, but also there's a cultural issue in the factory, or there's also a training issue with new people.
Yeah.
You have your framework, you have your guidelines, but you have to tweak it. And I'm just trying to get underneath what makes you different, because I think this is the important part. You have your guidelines, you have your structure, but you are creating something bespoke on what from.
Yeah. So what I didn't tell you, because I probably told you more of the tactical stuff, is the relationship building. And I will tell you, I actually have one client right now that's very challenging, that had been very challenging, because even though I tried to help the team, we were trying to get a quality certification, help the team, they were giving us a tremendous deadline. Like, it's got to be done by this date, because if we get it by this date, we can get more customer business. And I kept saying to them, is the team really ready? We're rushing. We're barely getting enough evidence to show an auditor that we can get this done. I keep trying to build trust with that leader to say, are you sure? Because at the end of the day, we want the team to be successful. We want them to have the pride. And ultimately, the customer will realize that value. So I sometimes have to work deeply in the relationships behind the scenes and get that leader to eventually realize, you're right. Ultimately, we want the team to be successful. We don't want to have a failure. That's going to demoralize people. I think what it is that I can lay out a strategy. and I can help the team execute it. But to your point, my value is in the establishment of relationships, because sometimes consultants will come in, they don't spend time building those relationships, and when the assignment's over, you pull them out.
Yeah.
And did you really change anybody? I have had multiple times, I even had the CEO of this company pull me aside and tell me exactly what was happening behind the scenes that his team could not know. And given that context, and oh my God, did he share some very close to the chest information, I then understood. And then I said, now I think you really need to A to Z. And you could see in his eyes and the energy relax. It's okay, that's really good information. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I'll reach out to that customer. I take the time to really understand what's bothering you. What's holding you back? Why are we making certain business decisions? Now, in the end, that leader reestablished relationship with that customer because, again, we needed that business. And also, we've taken the decision to delay a little bit this particular certification because we didn't want to stress the people. We want everybody to succeed. It wasn't about the date. It was about building customer confidence. So I would have to say I take the time.
Yeah.
Probably I don't charge enough, but I take the time to really understand that senior leadership, what's in their mind, and what do they need to hear from me in order to maybe make the right decisions. Yeah.
So one of the things that you do in your books is you challenge leaders to stop chasing results. What does that practically look like for a CEO who's trapped in the idea of quarterly results, performance cycles, and the next Q1 to Q2 is the most important thing? How do you help leaders reflect away from just chasing those quarterly results?
So it is a conundrum. It is a tough spot to be in because there is so much pressure. And then they get celebrated when they get the results. And so that kind of feeds the frenzy and that vicious cycle of doing that. And then I talk about then the people underneath them also burn out when you push them so hard just to get the results. So I do speak to them. Yes, you probably need to do some short-term results just to satisfy your stakeholders. But some of the best leaders that had vision, Apple and all the other great innovative time, would go into debt, would say, hold off. I know what I'm doing. Believe in me. These leaders have to have the courage to have discipline and tell their stakeholders, just give me the time, give me the right people. Let me work with this team to develop their capability and their confidence. The truest leaders, and this is where they should be spending like 60 to 70 to 80% of their time, is how do I remove the barriers and improve the capability of my people? Break down those barriers and let them perform on all engines. When we just focus on the lagging indicators of market share or bottom line profitability, that's all you're going to get. But when we focus and have the discipline, how can I upskill my people, remove the barriers in the relationships between departments, and unleash their potential? Because gosh darn it, you hire good people. So then if they're not performing, it's your job to help understand what is holding them back from performing. This takes time and discipline. And I will tell you, when I was in my last corporate role, I was no longer the smartest person in the room, and my energy would be wasted firefighting. But when I spent more time with my people, and yeah, it was tough. It was tough to get out of fourth position to finally get up to the second position in 18 months. I stuck to my guns and worked with my people to understand, why are they not having as much influence? Why are they working so many hours? Are they picking up somebody else's work because it's just easier? I work with my people. And then all of a sudden, they started getting more capability, capacity, and the confidence. I eventually moved up and up to the point where people were looking at my books and saying, are you really getting those numbers? Leaders need to be disciplined on focusing on what really matters, because when your people can perform, you can sleep at night and have peace of mind.
Wonderful. What are some of the most common blind spots with the executives that you work with?
Yeah, blind spots. So, one of them is, honestly, is having the courage to ask for help, because a lot of them have been celebrated so long for being resourceful and within their own ecosystem, pulling in people to take care of stuff. And sometimes they may wait too long and stuff goes into a crisis. I'll tell you honestly, in my last corporate role, one of my situations, somebody did give me a resume of an external consultant. He said, you might want to talk to this person. They might be of value. And I don't know what it was, either pride or maybe I never worked with a consultant before because I had all the resources in a large multinational company. company at my disposal. And in retrospect, I think maybe I should have at least given that person a call just to build a relationship, because the worst time to look for external resources is when you're in a crisis. But leaders need to cultivate an external network, whether it's a coach, whether it's somebody who's the head of engineering that knows how to put new infrastructure in place, maybe a person that's a sales coach that can help evolve your team. I learned the hard way that once I got out of corporate, I didn't have an external network. And I think one of the blind spots is they think they have an infinite set of resources internally. Build an external network of subject matter experts now. Hopefully you never need them, but if you do, you go through your Rolodex or your Excel file or whatever it is, you've got those people to pull in now. Now, I, as the Drop-In CEO, I'm an external partner servicing those small and medium-sized businesses. But if I can't solve and they say, you know, we're also having a safety issue. Do you know of anybody? Yeah, I'll come back to you in 2 or 3 days. I got a couple people I can introduce you to. That's my value. But again, C-suite leaders, get that external network now. It may help you now or in your next position.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to about growing your business. So leaving corporate and stepping into entrepreneurship has its challenges. What were the biggest obstacles that you faced on the first year when you were setting up Illumination Partners?
So this is really interesting. I came into a situation where I opened my doors and I started networking with my first degree connections in LinkedIn. And luck be have it, even though I didn't have my 30-second elevator pitch, I wound up getting 3 gigs in the first 6 months, with one of them lasting a full 16 months. I said, gosh, I got this thing down. And then things dried up. And I said, what happened? And what I realized was a couple things. I needed to build presence and a brand, how to stand out. And so in that process, the Drop-In CEO brand got developed. But I also realized as a business owner, you can only rely on your first degree connections so long. I did not have a business development process.
Right.
I was constantly relying on just putting out content, doing my podcast on the hope and a prayer that people would value me and come to me. And when that didn't happen, of course, you say, what did I do wrong? And I started burning through money. It's a real interesting thing. What do we learn from these things? Later, I realized I needed to further evolve my brand. I didn't show everybody all sides of Deb. Now, mind you, I'm a Gemini. There are multiple personalities here, but I didn't let my hair down and what were really the backstories. And somebody peeled away the onion or those layers. And sharing that now with you and others, they say, okay, Debbie's really relatable. Like she's got the same issues as I have. And then the second thing was I came into a sales coach. And there were things on the mindset side about selling versus, oh, I hope they like me and hope they like my value, to really having the courage to put yourself out there and say, I'm so glad we've had this. I love working with you, love these conversations, but have you found these things valuable that we've been talking about? I'd love to provide you more value. Finding a way to share my value with others versus not being in, oh, that's too salesy, will I turn them off, as well as putting systems and processes in place. Those have been some of the most valuable things that have helped me. Now, is my business blown up? Not yet. But I am seeing the leading indicators of those relationships, figuring out who are my partners, who are my referral partners, people that get me or that value my content. I'm staying in constant contact with them. And little by little, I'm seeing the leading indicators of, okay, they bought my book over here. Oh, they're buying a coaching service over here. I'm seeing that it's worked, but you have to play it for the long game. And so my suggestion to your listeners, get that sales process going if you are not by nature a salesperson.
It's the pipeline, because a lot of consultants, especially, they get a job, they then forget about sales and business development, and then they finish a contract and they're like, I'm scrambling, oh, I've got to get things in the pipeline. As a business owner, especially consultants, but businesses generally, you need to make sure that you've got a steady flow of new business leads and sales coming through,
and
that you don't have that sort of feast and famine setup as a business owner.
Yeah. And portfolio, and also having intermediate offers, because sometimes consultants can be high value and cost. They are an investment. And that was a big leap for some people to make. Oh, so I didn't realize I didn't have things that are lower tier that maybe they can have an opportunity to gain some value. Maybe podcast bundles, audio mini courses, things like that. So if they're listening to the podcast, reading my newsletter, where can they invest with minimal harm or minimal investment and realize even more value? So again, learning those tiers of offers and also the spectrum. It's not just my consulting. I got a little bit of coaching. My podcast, I am starting to monetize. I'm starting to get a few speaking gigs.
Right.
Business owners, you can't put all your eggs in one basket or whatever the expression is. You got to diversify to keep that steady income.
Great. So why don't you tell me about your podcast? How are you, what's the setup of it, and who are you trying to talk to? Who's the audience you're trying to talk to?
So thank you for asking that. The Drop-In CEO podcast is now at 545 episodes since starting February of 2020. And the audience has varied, but really I am talking to CEOs and presidents and of companies and C-suite leaders because I'm trying to offer them value and build trust by either my own insights or bringing those of experts onto the show. So on the show, I've brought CEOs, founders, presidents of their own companies, as well as experts that can help them, people that have IT organizations or HR services or safety. I've interviewed all of them and have a tremendous inventory of resources. But honestly, I'm trying to help the C-suite leader of today and tomorrow because I care about both demographic. And while my business is focused on helping that senior leader through some kind of transformation or crisis, my heart sings or it cares so much about that mid-level leader. And while they don't buy, the mid-level leader, they don't buy too much, but I know they're out there. I've spoken to a lot of my audience. They are there consuming my content because they don't have a support system. But could the podcast and all my other content be a resource for them? And I've had them come to me, Deb, because you put that out there, I was able to give some valuable feedback. I didn't have a framework for having a challenging conversation or giving feedback that was positive and actionable. They've come back to me. Now, on a hope and a prayer, I'm investing time in them, giving them valuable content on the hope that they get to that C-suite and they remember me and they might say, I want to bring Deb in for a lunch and learn. I want them to meet my people because I think she could be exactly what they need. This is what I envision. So I will say entrepreneurs have a lot of vision, hopes, and wishes, but I am building a lot of trust with my audience. Now, what's changing? In this season, I am slowing down bringing the guests. I love having guests on my show. I'm always learning. But my audience actually said to me, we miss hearing from you, Deb. And maybe your listeners will hear my voice is pretty soothing and they want my thoughts. So I'm in a season right now where I'm recording 3 solos a month and I'm taking on sponsored guests because I've actually found through business and learning that I am pitched to get on my show so much that I've actually used a counter offer to filter those that really value my platform. And now those that really value it are starting to pay a sponsorship fee to get on the show. Another stream of income. And I've learned my value because sometimes as consultants, we don't necessarily realize the value until we put it out into the world. But I am going to take it to the next level. There is a studio in my town where I can actually sit side by side with my guest. And I'm actually taking that for a test drive for both the audio and video quality, even though this video quality is excellent. I am seeing myself taking the podcast on the road and doing live interviews with people. That's the next direction, stage that I'm going to take, the Drop-In CEO.
Very exciting.
Oh, yeah.
You've got a new book as well, haven't you?
My book is in my head.
It's in your head.
And it's going to come out. So here's the thing. As a business owner, we always chase the shiny penny. We are so hard on ourselves. Oh, we got to update the website. I've got to put it out a new offer. I got to do some webinars so I can generate some business. Got to write a book. And we turn ourselves back into what we didn't want when we might have been in a corporate environment. So what I did was I sequenced things. I slowed things down a little bit, but I will tell you right now, the outline for the book is on my board behind me.
Right.
And I already feel some things changing. I already got a book coach. I already know exactly what the process is. The new CEO playbook, Stop Chasing Results and Start Pursuing Peace of Mind, is going to be at least written in 2025 and into the hands of the editor. I promise you, because my husband and I are actually going to go away for a weekend because we've been so busy and have not spent any time together. Sometimes going away to the state of Florida is exactly the time to flip the gears and get that what is in my head down on paper. So the new CEO playbook, stop chasing results and start pursuing peace of mind. I spoke a little bit about that, is the book that's going to be coming out.
And when do you think it will come out?
Probably June of 2026, because I've learned from writing a book, and again, I do work with a coach and some wonderful editors in book design. I can write 30,000 words, but it will take at least 6 weeks for somebody to edit it, and then another 6 weeks to go back and forth a little bit. I can work on the cover design. We already know how to upload it. So usually that whole process is about 6 months, and that's if everybody's in place. It may have taken a little bit of time, but I know what I have seen and what I say is going to be valued. And I've even heard people say once they find out about your second book, they say, oh, you wrote a first book too? I might see some sales go up on the CEO's Compass. But just know, as an entrepreneur, we've got to forgive ourselves a little bit. But the second book is in me because I just want to make sure it's not a one and done. I ran a half marathon once, and I was then challenged, oh, Deb, you want to run this second one? And I had to say, you know what? Got to make sure it was not a one and done. I got to have another hit. So I'm about ready to write the other hit.
Brilliant. Brilliant. There's a word that's come out with consultants, and especially in the US, fractional. And it appeared, I don't know, 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, this whole idea of fractional leaders. And there's, in essence, me reading through the spin of fractional. You're a consultant, but you're doing a 2-day job in a company, like as a CFO, a COO, a CIO, whatever the role is. What's your thoughts on the fractional leader? And would you describe yourself as a fractional leader? You've used consultant a few times in this conversation. Yeah. Where do you sit with consultant versus fractional?
Yeah, so another thing to any of your business owners or entrepreneurs is having to stand out, because this is the other thing that I learned. Had I owned the label of a consultant, consultants can be seen as expensive and sometimes of not having a lot of value. So there are negative stigmas in the industry for a consultant. And by the way, there are millions of them, so I can't compete with them all. But when I looked at my style of being able to drop into an organization and provide value at a fraction of the cost of a full-time person and a fraction of the time based on my experience, fractional is a lot of the work that I can do. Now, one of my clients, I'm not doing it, it's very project oriented, but I am a senior leader. I have dropped into organizations where they had to fire that leader because they were toxic to the environment, or maybe they left the company and they never replaced. You need to drop in somebody that knows the role, both technically and the leadership, to be able to give direction and execute with the team. And again, it's only part-time, but they get high value as if they had a full-time person. Now, yes, I identify with fractionals. There's a lot of fractional organizations, but that too is getting crowded. And when you're trying to market yourself and stand out and build trust, the drop-in CEO, there are no others. I am the only drop-in CEO, which myself, as we talked about, yes, I provide technical support, some consultancy. I can drop in on a fractional basis and provide value. And I deal with the messy middle of having to coach the leader and coach the people on their team, maybe. Those may be all the different things depending on what their situation is and maturity of the organization. I'll do whatever is needed to help achieve that outcome. Yes, you can call me a fractional, but in order to stand out from the crowd and be trusted and different, I am the drop-in CEO. And I ask others when they start marketing themselves, look at themselves and what differentiates them. You've been kind enough to ask me what makes me different. Come up with a cute tagline, something that says, I'm Deb Coviello, and you'll stand out. That's so critical, to stand out so your voice is heard and people, you can start building trust with them.
Yeah. How do you think you've evolved as a leader?
Oh my God. I told you I was a Gemini. There's two parts of me. So internally, The internal Deb is, I want to get things done now. I want everything in my control. I'm going to do anything and everything to make things happen. That's still how I'm wired. On the other hand, I have realized that I'm dealing with humans. Consensus building to make people feel good about what they're doing is so important, because while I may work with them at the end of the day and achieve a certain result, a project, I help them through a tough time, at the end of the day, my leadership style is really about shining a light on others, lifting them up to see what their true potential is, and create relationships for lasting impact. Because I find that when I drop into situations, whether it's my corporate role or here, I may help a business, but I'm also helping the people, because those people may move to other organizations, and they have, and they remember me, and they say, hey, Deb, can we talk? That's really what I'm finding is the ultimate outcome, is building your legacy, how you remember by, and how you made people feel. I really think that has been how my leadership style has changed, from very transactional to very relational.
Amazing. Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick fire questions. They do not need a quick fire answer. First question is, what's the best decision you've made?
Oh my God. Marrying my husband. You'll hear me talk about Dan on my podcast. He is an absolute saint. He saw through all my craziness and my family upbringing. Making the decision to marry him has been great, because he's my best friend, and he has been there every step of the way. He is probably not my mentor, but my coach, to have to face life with reality, let things brush off my shoulder, give me some hard conversations where I used to say no, but now I listen to him, because all he wants to do is see me succeed and be happy. So best decision, marrying my husband, and I'm sticking with that.
Amazing. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
My mother told me this one once, was make you the world a bit more better and beautiful because you were in it. And ultimately what you do, people will forget, but how you made them feel, and you've heard those expressions, is really what will leave an impact. And when, your kids say something like, Mom, I met up with a buddy from high school, and you know what? I don't really like what they're doing with their life. You were right when you said we should sit at the dinner table and have dinner and blah, blah, blah. I said, Mom, you were right. And when that how you live your life is having an impact on the people in your care, that is really an indicator of success. So make you the world a bit more better and beautiful because you were in it,
Great.
and leave your legacy with others. Yeah.
Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one, because for me, I've always talked about not having a support system. I was very self-sufficient, independent, got my certifications, resourceful, got ahead. And I don't remember any one person that really guided me or mentored me, or I just wasn't mature enough to even see it. I think people later in life are the ones that are supporting me the most. And I will give credit to David Hasse. He is my mentor. He wrote the foreword for my first book. And all he says to me, he says, I can't believe from the day I saw you, we had a beverage and had a meal at a pub, to where you're at right now. I said, all I want to do is see you succeed. And so him being on my shoulder right now, I keep in touch with him now every month. I wasn't so good about it. Him just being there, being a silent cheerleader, has been very rewarding and helps guide me.
Amazing. Tell me about a regret that you have.
Regret. It's getting a little emotional here, because it's more of a life lesson in that I lost my creativity. Maybe it was generational, maybe it was me trying to escape my family situation, but I was just so very focused on moving up in my career, being a super mom, doing it all that stuff. And you get to a point in your life, not that I'm over the hill or anything, I got a lot more time on this earth, but regretting losing myself, because again, I've shared at different points in our conversations, I rediscovered who I once was as a creative. And while I am trained as an engineer, a problem solver, a leader in manufacturing, I remember one day having lunch with somebody, and I said, you see me right now, and I just switched over to entrepreneurship. I said, I'd love some feedback. What do you see? And she says, you're very busy, but you're not present. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I am forever trying to make sure I am more and more present, less and less busy so I can enjoy the life that I am creating. But also the regret is somewhere along the line, I lost who I was as a creative and accepted that. But now I'm in a place where all I want to do is create, and I'm so grateful for it.
So you've mentioned it a couple of times, being creative. What's your definition of creative?
Oh my God. It's this woo stuff. It's this flow. So for instance, I love writing. I love speaking. And when I get in flow, getting my ideas out there, even now, right now, I'm looking at you, but I'm like in my zone. Anytime I create a piece of written content, a video, sharing my insights with the world in such a way that I can connect with somebody and help them to understand how I'm helping them or getting them to think differently. When I'm done with those segments, and even when we get off the phone or the conversation here, I'm going to be so fulfilled. Now, my energy is going to be drained, but I just love creating, co-creating with somebody. And when I can't do that, I love cooking. I will feed an army. I will feed my curling club because I'm creating community by feeding their souls. And so it is just so fulfilling to be able to share my gifts with the world and see what the impact is and how I can connect with others. That's the creative side with me, along with I've got all these crazy ideas all the time and not enough hours in the day to get it all done.
Amazing. Thank you. Next question. Was there a time that you wanted to give up, and what pulled you through to continue?
Oh my God, I got to tell you this one. This is crazy. About 3-4 months ago, almost stopped the Drop-In CEO podcast. I was at a place where I was tired. I was interviewing 2 guests a week and paying production costs for that. And I was just like starting to reschedule and losing joy. And I said, maybe this is just the time. Even though it would break my heart, let me just stop. And what happened was I was concurrently saying, I don't like the cover art for my show. I gave them a couple ideas, the production company. Can you just redo it, replace these pictures? And I just come home from a lovely weekend visiting my son. And again, I was going to simplify my lifestyle. And all of a sudden they send me the cover art and I say, oh, shoot. The cover art was absolutely amazing. It was the cover art that I'd never actually got. And I says, this is it. I can't stop the podcast. I want to put this cover out into the world. It was me in a pensive pose, looking fabulous. And I said, oh my God, the podcast has to keep going. So I said, listen, then I'll evolve it. Let's just do one a week. Let's just do solos for now. And let's keep going. So yeah, that's what just happened recently.
Well done for carrying on. It's a labor of love to run a podcast.
It is. You and I here just having a conversation too. Just love the platform and whoever we can connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me something about you that most people don't know about.
God, I probably already shared a bunch of these things. Like I said, I'm a curler. A lot of people in the U.S. have never seen curling or never knew a curler. I'll just share that because I really think that's a fun fact about me. I picked up curling about 17 years ago and never thought I could play a sport well. But it's one of those things like golf or so many other thoughts. First of all, you're not over the hill. I just turned 60 and I still am vibrant. I got a lot of energy. I'm building muscles like you never would believe. There's something about curling and trying out a new sport and actually being successful and then joining a new community. I would just encourage people, regardless of where you're at in your life, try something new. You might actually surprise yourself and actually be good at it. Most people don't know that I curl. One other fun fact, I used to be on radio as a kid with a program about children interviewing adults in different lifestyles. I haven't shared that much, but who knows, maybe that was the beginning of what I'm doing now. So maybe I was destined to do that. Yeah.
What does legacy mean to you?
It's interesting, legacy. I'll just tell you one thing. I do have a hard time with the concept of death. It's something I've never really been equipped for, never really had the life skills. And little by little, as I get older, I see things happening. But I realize that I can't take things with me. I have had some validation because of some relationships I've had at work or other that I've changed the trajectory of people and how they think about themselves. And I've been able to coach people, and I see my children becoming wonderful citizens of society, becoming good people. I want to be remembered for that Mom said some things that made sense and created a home and stability and calm, even amidst chaos. I just want to be remembered and made people feel that they feel their fullest, their capacity. That's really my legacy, and hopefully the content, the podcasts, and those relationships will be long lasting far beyond my years.
Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you or find out more about what you do?
Well, Mark, first of all, just thank you so much for sharing the platform with me
Pleasure.
and sharing the mic. I always enjoy these conversations. But I would love for those out there, if you want to connect with me, go to my website, dropinceo.com. Find me there, go to my contact page. Let's just have a quick chat. And also, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Look for Deborah A. Coviello or the Drop In CEO. Direct message me. Let's connect. Let me start sharing some value with you. I'd love to get to know you. I'm not out there for a sale. I am about building trust and relationships, and we'll see where things go. So, again, Mark, thank you so much for having me on the show and giving this opportunity to speak to your audience.